If you've been building your business solo and secretly wondering if you're doing it all wrong, then I want to invite you into something that might just change the game. It's called the Freedom Business Circle, a newly developed group coaching that I run with my business and life partner, Badr Lakshiri, who's also a transformational realignment coach with nearly 2 decades of experience. This coaching group is not another course or mastermind. It's a high impact coaching space for creators, coaches, and online business builders who are ready to grow their income and their freedom at the same time. Inside, we focus on aligned growth. No hacks, no burnout. We want to make sure that you're growing your business in a way that feels in alignment with your purpose. We do so with 2 powerful coaching calls a month, once a week asynchronous coaching inside our 24/7 available Slack community where Badr and I jump in every single week for an entire day to answer your questions, and you will gain access to curated Slack community that actually gives a damn. See, whether you're hovering around your first few clients, have spent the last 6 months perfecting your offer or content strategy without putting anything out there, or are finally ready to hit 2 to 5K months consistently, this space gives you structure, feedback, and the community to make it happen without selling your soul or having to duct tape your business together from freebies. Because here's the thing. The Freedom Business Circle lives right in between the $20,000 a year mastermind and a free Facebook group that you've already muted. The circle is open now, and for only $97 a month for the first 10 members and $147 a month after, you can plug in immediately. I mean today, and you can cancel at any time. So head to the link in the show notes to learn more and claim your seat inside the Freedom Business Circle today. All right, let's get into the episode. Welcome to the Your Business Untethered podcast, a space for freedom seekers ready to build and scale a business that supports their wildest dreams, even while traveling the world. Hi, I'm Dina, creator of Way of the Founder and your host. I imagine this podcast as a space where aspiring and established freedom entrepreneurs come to forge a path towards purpose, financial freedom, meaningful impact, and location independence. I'll be your guide as we defy the norm, heal old conditioning, and step into the leaders we were born to be. I myself am a firstborn, a daughter of divorcee, sister, girlfriend, professional coach, nomad, and expat of a decade plus, as well as yoga aficionado and energy healer. In my previous career, however, I worked a 9-to-5 as a professional fundraiser for American orchestras. Can you believe it? However, I needed more. I needed more freedom in my life. So 5 years ago, I called quits on resume success and claimed back the reins over my own life. What started with a one-way ticket to Vietnam and a single backpack filled to the brim has since grown into Way of the Founder, where I've helped hundreds of clients defy and heal from the past that were told to follow, redefine freedom, fulfillment, and success on their own terms, and build impact-driven businesses that let them live and work from anywhere. Join me each week for deep dives into leadership, strategy, and mindset, as well as healing that fuel the untethered CEO. That's you. Whether you're building your dream with a coconut flight ticket, wine glass, or coffee in hand, you are in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello. Welcome back to another episode. I'm here today with Louise Jeffrey, who is well-traveled like most guests on this podcast. Originally from South Africa, she's traveled to the Americas, lived in England, and is currently calling Sydney her home. Louise is a mindset and transformation coach and helps conscious entrepreneurs break free from the beliefs and limitations that hold them back. She uses energetic architecture to align who they are with their next level of success to create the life and business of their dreams. Louise uses neuroscience and quantum physics to make sense of how the brain, body, and spirit work together. And right there, I just said a whole lot of words that I don't completely understand, that I cannot wait to dive into with you. But Louise, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here.
It's lovely to have you. Tell us your story. What brought you here?
So, as you know, I'm well traveled. I'm from South Africa originally. We live in Sydney, Australia. I have 3 teenage boys. And a husband, so a house full of boys, and then just me around this masculine energy. But it's a crazy but fun house to live in. But I've been an entrepreneur now for about 15 years. I was in corporate for many, many years, and then decided I wanted to do something more meaningful with my life. So then I actually went and studied acupuncture and Chinese medicine. And I ended up practicing acupuncture. I still do some acupuncture. I love it. It's an amazing healing art, and I don't think I'll ever give it up. It's one of those things that I'll take with me to the last day that I work, I reckon. But, I'm also a coach. I'm a mindset and transformation coach. I like to call myself an energetic architecture coach. But for many years, I was a struggling entrepreneur. I was an acupuncturist and a coach, and I was trading time for money and realizing that I was working in a one-to-one format and that I could make a bigger impact if I moved to a group format. About 8 or 10 years ago, I started moving to leverage my time more and to make a bigger impact to working with women in groups rather than just one-to-one. And I bought so many courses over the years, right? Hundreds of thousands of dollars I've spent on business coaching, on personal development coaching. But what I found is that I had this vision for myself and for my business, but I still kept on kind of hitting an invisible ceiling in terms of income, in terms of where I could go. And this was kind of a pattern that was continuing to happen for me, no matter how hard I would try, no matter how hard I would work, no matter what framework or strategy or tools I invested in, I kept on kind of not being able to sort of get past that next level. And it wasn't until early last year when I started working with a mentor, a mindset mentor, and we started working on my energy and my frequency rather than just my mindset, rather than just my the strategies and the frameworks and everything else that business coaches normally teach. She really helped me to start to focus on who I wanted to become to achieve my next level in business. Because the truth is, everything in the world is made up of energy. We know this from quantum physics. And whatever frequency we as human beings are predominantly operating at is what we will attract back to us. It's the law of attraction and the law of manifestation. But, a lot of the time, we have a lot of coaches teaching manifestation out there. We have a lot of coaches teaching, how to manifest whatever it is that we want in our lives. But the one key piece that I really feel that they're missing is it's not okay just to affirm it or to visualize it. We actually have to become what it is that we are desiring for ourselves. And so whatever frequency we are predominantly vibrating at is really what we're going to attract back to us. So to achieve my next level, I learned that I needed to let go of the inner blocks that were holding me stuck at the lower frequency. And I needed to raise my frequency to that of my next level. I needed to do the energetic work first. I had to get clear on where I was going and who I was serving. But I also then had to raise my standards, not just in my external world, but in my internal world too. So I then started taking aligned action, and that's when everything changed. And I had my first successful launch late last year, which was amazing. And this year's going to be the best.
Congratulations.
year yet. Thank you in terms of revenue. So that was a bit of a long-winded story as to how I ended up where I am now. But yeah, it's beautiful to be here and to be telling you my story.
So many questions. Let's go through those questions chronologically. Take me back to when you left corporate. A lot of the listeners are either a trapped founder and need to do the second part of your story and figure out how to move from 101 into a more scalable model. But some of the other listeners are just getting themselves out of their 9 to 5, just getting themselves out of their corporate environment. So I wonder if you can take us back to the couple of months leading up to making the decision of leaving your corporate job. What was that like? What was your external environment like? What was your internal environment like? And what was ultimately the reason that you chose to leave?
Sure. So I'll tell you, there's a little bit of a backstory that goes with what happened for me. So I was in corporate. I was in marketing, and I was a brand manager and a marketing manager and media manager for a number of years. And that's kind of what I studied, and that's where I ended up. And I was, I was a career girl, and I was working super hard and pretty much almost burning myself out.
Which country was this in? Can I ask which country?
In South Africa and in the UK and in London. So then what happened is my husband and I, we were both in corporate. We weren't married then. He was just my boyfriend at the time. he encouraged me to take a couple of years on, let's go traveling. And I was like, right, okay. So we left and we went to work. Actually, we went to work on super yachts. We lived in the Caribbean for a little while, but for 3 years we worked on super yachts. And I think because I was, for the first time, instead of using my brain and just having constant overthinking going on in my brain, I was using my hands. I was suddenly left with a lot of natural introspection time. It was around that time that I also started meditating. And it was in my meditation that I really started to realize, and in this kind of natural space that I created for myself, I started to realize that I wanted to do something more meaningful. I wanted to give back to the world and I wanted to make an impact. And whilst I enjoyed my corporate job to a degree, I loved the people I worked with and, it was great. It was fun. Just really, that the heart was missing. And so I then, while we were actually in yachting, I decided towards the end, I said to my husband, I think I'm going to totally give up my career. And he was a little bit horrified at the beginning, but I'm going to give up my career and I'm going to go and study acupuncture. And he was like, okay. But obviously when we landed in London, we bought a house. And so we also had, like I'm sure a lot of your listeners will have, you've got financial commitments. We didn't have kids at that stage, but we had financial commitments. So what we did is that I started doing a flexi full-time degree. So I actually started studying while I was still working and I had a big overlap. So I was working a 5-day week and then I would go to uni on the weekends and I would do my university as a full-time degree. It was 4 years. And then what happened, there was this kind of natural transition for me. As I finished my degree, we moved from the UK to Australia. And I had a 2-year-old at that point. So my life was super full and super busy. And then I still had my corporate job, right? So I'd finished studying and there was a part of me that was still holding on to corporate because I was really terrified of letting go. I was terrified of losing my income, of losing my safety blanket of I've always got this to fall back on. I've got paid holidays, like all those things. I've got a child now who needs to go into childcare. Like, what am I going to do? And lucky for me, I still had my husband. He's always been supportive and there was his salary as well. So, we had a little bit more to fall back on. I know not everybody has that. There was my safety blanket and then there was my heart was pushing me to go there. And when we landed in Australia, I kind of felt like, I had my second child and I was like, right, it's now or never. I'm going to have to do this now. If I don't do this now, I know that I can go back to my safety blanket. I can go back to corporate, to what I know, and I know I'm successful and I know I'm good at that, but then I'm never going to feel alive. Because when I was studying acupuncture, for the first time in my life, I felt like I was following my calling. And so I decided to leap and I decided I'm just going to do it anyway. I'm just going to go for it. And so I kind of threw everything into it. I decided, yes, I was just coming back from having my second child, but I was going to give the same commitment to my new vocation as had been giving to corporate. Like if I could give that kind of commitment to corporate, why couldn't I give it to myself? And so I threw kind of everything in. I went straight into practice 4 days. I got a space. I said, right, it's going to be 4 days of acupuncture or 3.5, technically because of the kids. But I'm not just going to be doing this 1 day or half a day or dabbling in it. I'm going to throw everything. So I did. And I think when you do that and you're all in and you kind of commit in that way, then, within 6 months, I was super busy in my acupuncture practice because I was going hard at the marketing and I was doing everything. So it was a lot of hesitation, but once I took that leap, and you know what, it was the best thing I ever did, to be honest, because otherwise I'd probably still have 1 foot in corporate, I think, and 1 foot left there.
I so appreciate that story and you sharing the story with us. I think you mentioned something that is so important. You have to get rid of the backup plan. When you become an entrepreneur, that business has to be plan A, B, C, all the way through Z. You cannot have a backup plan. It helps to know that there is a safety blanket, but in your head, you have to sort of close that door to, I could always go back to my old job. No. This has to be the plan.
I agree with you. I think it does, because I think if we don't do that, then energetically we have not told the universe, we haven't told ourselves, we haven't told our unconscious mind that we're ready for this, right? We're kind of going, you know what? Like I'm giving mixed messages here. I'm sort of half there and I'm half there. You kind of have to feel the fear and do it anyway, because the only thing that's holding us back is our own fear. That's the only thing. Because honestly, truly, if we really want anything, we can have it. We just have to believe and we have to take inspired action. That's all.
Absolutely. This reminds me of an analogy that I read many, many years ago in one of the many mindset books. And I forget which book now, I can remember, I'll put it in the show notes. But the analogy was the universe is like a dog, and you have to give a dog a really clear command in order for the dog to bring you the thing. You can't just say, hey, bring me the thing. You have to be really specific.
And very clear. I love that.
Such a silly analogy, but it really truly works. You have to go all in. You have to be clear on where it is that you're going and why this matters to you.
And the why, you're so right. The why is so important. It's one of the things that we focus quite a lot on in my group program, right? In my bigger program, is I always get people to tap into the why, because we often, when we're focused on our vision, we know we want to go somewhere, right? And then we kind of get stuck in the how, and we get so stuck in the how that we can't. It's like we always get people to take a step back and say, just take a step back, focus on what it is that you want and why you want it. Because when you know why you want something, that immediately pulls you back in that direction again. You've got to tap back into the why, 100%.
Oh my gosh, I so resonate with that. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. What is your purpose? Who are you doing this for? Why does this matter? Who does this matter to? These are big questions. They're scary questions, but you have to answer them. And once you answer them, like you said, it's like a pull towards your vision. So let's talk a little bit more about that. I'm just going to ask like the biggest question ever. How do you find your why?
How do you find your why? You need to ask the right questions around your why. So and I take people kind of through this exercise where when we take the time to really stop and to ask the deeper questions, we'll ask a question and say, well, for example, why do you want to start your own business? Why do you want to be an entrepreneur? And people will often say, well, I want freedom. Okay, well, what does that freedom mean to you? What will it give you? What will it offer you? And then they say, oh, that freedom will allow me to travel. And it's like, well, wow, what does traveling give you? What does it mean? What will it offer you? How will your life be different? And every single time we continue to ask that question again and again and again, we get down to what the deeper meaning is underneath. And that is when it is so beautiful, because people get totally in touch with what's really, truly in their heart. And when they're totally in touch with what's really, truly in their heart, I really believe that they found their purpose, right? That's that connection, that aliveness that I was telling you about, where I felt like if I went back to corporate, I would never feel that alive again. That's my why. That's what's underneath, and that's the beauty of being able to do the work that you do, the work that I do in the world, is that we get to tap into that almost every day, right? We get to align what it is that we're here to do on this planet with what we offer people. And that's incredible.
It's really the secret sauce, right? There are a lot of frameworks, blueprints, 3-step formulas, whatever you want to call them out there, right? Of how to create a 6-figure business, how to go to 7 figures. But really, if you don't know why you're doing this, why this matters to you, who it matters to, none of these frameworks will work for you, right? No. And you may not even know how to choose the right strategy.
Because there's always going to be a part of you. The way that I kind of describe it is, we were talking about that invisible string that's pulling you forward towards your why. If that isn't strong, you're almost going to get pulled slightly to the left. Your unconscious mind will pull you here. Your low frequency fears will pull you there, and you'll keep getting pulled off course. But we've got to kind of keep the rudder, keeping us focused on the invisible string that pulls us forward.
Yeah. So I'm curious about your invisible string. Your invisible string that's pulling you forward, right? You started your entrepreneurial journey as an acupuncturist. Yes. Which I love, by the way. Acupuncture and TMC, traditional Chinese medicine, definitely saved me from a lot of autoimmune diseases that were just, keeping me bedridden for a really long time. So I have a very, very passionate, very personal connection to that practice. How did you go from opening up your acupuncture practice to now being a mindset and transformational coach?
Yeah. So there's another little story I'll tell you, that I'm always telling everything in stories. But essentially, so I knew I wanted to make a difference. That's where acupuncture came in. And acupuncture was a beautiful mix of the scientific and the mystical, right? I love the mystical, but I also that's why I love quantum physics and neuroscience, because I like to know, how do we work physically as human beings, right? But of course, there's an energetic part to us as well. So I loved acupuncture. And so I jumped in and did a 4-year degree. And then what happened is I started immediately, because it was something I was interested in. I was treating women who were going through IVF and men and had fertility issues. And what happened is that these men and women who were going through IVF, my acupuncture training didn't equip me well enough to deal with how fragile they were, to deal with the mindset piece of the fertility journey, because it's huge, right? Being able to keep yourself in a positive mindset, being able to really, hold fast to your vision of having a family. All of those things are really hard because it's so taxing on the body physically. And I didn't feel equipped. So then I went, being the eternal studier that I am, and I then I added to my toolbox. I studied strategic psychotherapy, clinical hypnotherapy, and I also did eating psychology as a separate piece on that. But then I felt far better equipped to help these men and women who were going through IVF. And it was actually true for anyone who came into my acupuncture practice. It didn't even have to be IVF. People were just opening up and telling me everything. And I'm like, but I'm not a counselor, right? So then suddenly I ended up realizing that mindset and transformation was really it's what I love. I love energetics and I love all that stuff, acupuncture, but this is where I really feel like it's my calling. And it's kind of, in a way, it's brought me kind of to where I am today, because that training, psychotherapy training, has allowed me to continually evolve to where I am now, which is really teaching people how they can use quantum physics and neuroscience to master their mind and to control their thoughts. Because if I'm honest with you, what I want to see happening in the world is that in schools, children are taught, this should be one of their subjects, how to master your mind, how to control your thoughts, how to raise your frequency, how to tap into we've got so much wisdom inside of us. We have got everything we ever needed is inside of ourselves. And yet we're constantly looking externally for everything. But, what an amazing place would this world be? For example, I've got 3 teenage boys. And I talk to them all the time. Just because you think something doesn't make it true. I'm constantly getting them to question their thoughts. But what if I could have taught them that from the moment they were born all the way through? What if those subjects were taught at school? And for me, I feel like we wouldn't have depression in nearly as big or as large amounts as we do in the world today, or anxiety, or even all the physical ailments that we have that are created because there's so much stress within the body. So that's kind of my why. One of my whys is to make a bigger impact in terms of how can I help human beings to become happier and healthier within themselves.
It's so resonant for me. Someone asked me just the other day on a podcast that I was on, if there is a message I'd like to give to new coaches. This was a podcast for coaches about coaches by coaches. And I thought about it. I hope they edit out the pauses, because I had to really think about what's the one message I would want to leave new coaches with. And it resonates so deeply with your why. I believe that those of us who were called to be coaches were called to be coaches for a reason. And coaches truly are contributing to the healing that this world needs. It sounds audaciously big, but I truly believe that, right? If we can, like you said, if we can contribute to teaching the entire world, starting with the youngest, starting with our children, how to think, how to regulate their emotions, how to enter into partnership with their thoughts, with their emotions, with the thoughts and emotions of their partner, we can help heal this world. We can help this world move from hatred and bloodshedding towards loving. It
100%.
truly is that big. And it truly is that big a mission that, again, those of us who got the calling, the coaching calling, we're called to contribute to. I truly believe that.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that, once we learn to master our own inner world, that's when we have fulfilling relationships. Like you said, that's when we can truly listen to other people. That's when our cup is full and we can create space for bringing positive energy. Because where did war come from? War comes from people who are deeply troubled within themselves and who are desperate to hold on to power or money or whatever it is that they're projecting outwards into this huge shadow that they're projecting out onto the world and getting armies behind them. So, it sounds like I'm being a bit dramatic, but really, truly, if we can all work on our inner worlds, it can dramatically impact, like you say, the healing of the rest of the world.
Absolutely. I don't think it's dramatic at all. I think we need to shout it from the rooftops.
Yeah.
So you talk about quantum physics, about the energetic frequencies. And I want to dive into that, because clearly you're not approaching this from a meditate all day and you shall be wealthy woo-woo perspective. You're really looking at the whole construct that, consists of the spirit, the body, and the mind. What does it mean to use quantum physics and to use energetics and to tap into a new frequency? Just help us understand the terminology and how it applies to transforming your life.
So I suppose a good place to start is really a comment that I made earlier, which is that everything in this world is made up of energy. You, me, this plant that's next to me, my computer, my desk, everything is made up of energy. Everything in the world is vibrating at a certain frequency. And what we know from quantum physics is that there's something called the observer effect, which I'm sure you've heard of before. It's essentially when we observe something, we have the power to influence that object. And there's lots of, I don't want to kind of, geek out too much on quantum physics as a concept, but essentially the bottom line, the thing that we really need to know about this is that when we observe something, we are able to change its frequency. We are able to help to change the frequency of that object. And that includes ourselves. All the realities that we are potentially able to create for ourselves in our lives are all, instead of being on a linear timeline from the beginning, here's the beginning and here's the end as we know it. We think we have birth and then we have death. And that's, and then we're kind of working somewhere in between. That's not necessarily true. We know from quantum physics that all the different, your past, your present, and your future are all layered right up and down. And they're all happening simultaneously. Now, that may sound like a bit of a strange concept to grasp, but all you really need to know is there are multiple possibilities and opportunities that are available for you that are already circulating within your frequency around you because you are vibrating at a certain frequency. And if you want a certain possibility, if you want a certain reality to be created for yourself, all you have to do is you have to master your own frequency so that you can then attract to you the frequency of that possibility or that opportunity. Now, that's what we know from quantum physics. When it comes to neuroscience, we know how do we do that? We use the wiring of our brains. We use the ability for us to change our neural pathways. We're able to utilize that through visualization, through affirmation, and through using our external world to really start raising our frequency, raising our level of consciousness, and then we start to attract that back to us. So I don't know if you have heard of Dr. David Hawkins? He's an amazing, or he was an amazing man because he's no longer with us. He passed away about 10 years ago. But he wrote a book called The Levels of Consciousness. He actually wrote a number of books, Power versus Force, but he talks about the levels of consciousness. And these levels of consciousness are essentially the way that the body expresses emotion. So essentially, David Hawkins was able to record the levels of consciousness, what he documented over a 30-year period, through the expression of the way that that the emotions that are felt within the body, what frequency they vibrate at. So he was able then to map these levels of consciousness. Now we know we have lower frequency emotions or states of being, as we like to call them. So things like, anger and sadness and despair and depression. And then obviously we have, as we move up the levels of consciousness, we kind of come into the more empowering states of being, like neutrality and like compassion and love, and then into the real upper levels of consciousness, like enlightenment, for example, where some of the sages have ended up being. So those levels of consciousness, if we can help ourselves to predominantly vibrate at a certain frequency or a certain level of consciousness, then we're much more likely to have possibilities and opportunities that are going to come back to us, that are going to be presented to us. Now, whether or not you believe that these levels of consciousness are in fact legitimate, whether or not you believe that quantum physics itself, the model that we're talking about, is legitimate, one thing we do know for sure from neuroscience is that even if you only believe in the way that the unconscious mind works, we know that if we start to affirm to the unconscious mind that we already have something here in the present moment, then the unconscious mind will actively seek out possibilities and opportunities to make that true. And so what we help you to do is to start to bring to you more possibilities and opportunities that are going to get you towards your vision, towards your why, towards the thing that you're moving towards much more quickly if you can raise your level of consciousness and if you can raise your frequency. Does that make sense? Does that explain it to you in a way that you think your listeners would be able to understand?
I think absolutely. Yes. The question that comes up is, does this really work? And how do I raise my frequency? Right. So I'm fully with you. I see it all the time with myself, with clients, right? The moment you lock onto something, like we said before, the moment you allow that string to pull you forward and let all of the plan Bs fall by the side.
Yes.
Life conspires for you. Life begins to place opportunities in front of you, the right opportunities, right?
It does.
And that very much is the action of raising your frequency. And for those amongst the listeners who don't quite know what we're talking about, I wonder, because I believe that we all have experienced this.
Yes.
We're just not aware of it.
Exactly.
And therefore we can't actually consciously or intentionally implement it.
Yes.
So how might listeners be able to just sort of, go down memory lane and pick out one or two moments in their lives where this actually happened, whether they were aware of it or not?
Yes. So one of the most beautiful ways to really reflect on this, because that's what you've asked everyone to do here, is to look back and notice when there was a time when you felt like you were in flow, when you felt like everything was kind of easy and effortless. Like you didn't have to think much about it. You felt good. You felt positive. Everything you were doing, was just flowing. The conversations you were having, the actions you were taking were creating results. That's the state of flow, and I'm sure, we could spend a whole podcast just talking about flow and how to induce flow. But essentially, when you raise your level of consciousness and you raise your frequency, those periods of flow become much more frequent. And what do we know about flow? We know that when we're in flow, we're aligned, right? We are able to create results in a much faster and much quicker way. And we feel good about it, right? We're vibrating at a high frequency. So if you reflect back and you look back at your life and you notice when you had a period of flow, and then you may or may not have noticed this at the time, but something will happen. There'll be a trigger, right? And suddenly you'll be pulled straight back out of it again, right? And you pull back into those lower levels of frequency, those lower levels of consciousness where suddenly you feel anxious or you feel like something's happening. And it may be that you just woke up the next day and suddenly, you weren't feeling great. Maybe there wasn't a trigger that you noticed. But when people come into the program and we start working with this, and you're absolutely right, the first thing we get people to do is to start to become aware, to become consciously aware of what's actually happening, of what's happening in the body, what's happening in the mind, when they're in a higher level of consciousness and when they're in a lower one. And what they will notice is that the body feels different. The mind feels different. The thoughts are different. We act differently. We behave differently. We walk differently. We talk differently, right? So it is normal and natural for us to vibrate at a certain level of consciousness. But then we drop back into the fear states or the lower levels. That's normal and natural. But where we predominantly are is the most important thing. That's what's going to determine our level of success. So most human beings will drop back into the lower ones. Some human beings, sadly, are really stuck in those lower levels, right? It's very, very difficult. They might predominate there and then jump up here every now and again. So the point is that we teach you how to access those high frequency states more often. And as people come into the program, in the beginning, they'll learn how to access the state of flow. They'll learn how to move into those higher levels. And a lot of it is we have to do a whole lot of pre-work first, right? We have to define and get clarity on the vision and the why. We decide who we have to become to achieve that intention. We have to start setting new standards, new boundaries, new non-negotiables. So we work with the internal world and the external to initiate what we call this identity shift, where we start to become someone new by changing our frequency. But then what will happen is the unconscious mind is very clever, right? It's like, but hang on, this is not safe. This is not safe. The unconscious mind wants what's familiar. And what's familiar is the way that we've always operated. The level and the frequency that we've always operated at, the unconscious mind is like, I prefer being there because it's easier. I know that. And so it'll bring up fear. It'll bring up, different kinds of emotions to try and pull us back to make us think that it's not working, right? That this is not happening for us. And so we teach you in the program how to navigate that. How do you navigate fear? How do you sit with your fear? How do you sit with your feelings? How do you rise above it? And I don't like to use the word overcome because we don't have to overcome fear. All we have to do is know that it's just fear, right? And once we learn how to do that, it is literally, this is one of the life skills I wish we could teach in schools, is to get people to understand that fear is just a feeling in the body. It's just a physiological reaction. Does it mean that you are in imminent danger? Sometimes, very rarely in the first world countries. Yes, it does. And if someone's chasing you with a gun, you need to run away, right? But Most of the time, 99% of the time, that's not true. And it's just fear and it's just a physiological feeling. Once we teach you how to be with that and how to rise above that fear, then immediately people notice, they're like, oh my God, and they tap straight back into that high level of consciousness. And we start to help people to vibrate at that higher level of consciousness predominantly, and how to get back there more quickly. And it's not by forcing or pushing or shoving or hustling or grinding. It's literally by actually working with your energy. And it's a beautiful, beautiful process to go through, because it is really so deeply empowering. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to bring us back to something you said earlier about having to become your goal, right? I think this maybe can help the listener think of this in a more concrete and applicable way.
Yes.
Right? Like,
yes.
Let's raise our frequencies to become my goal. What does that mean? What does that look like to have to become your goal?
So let's use the example.
And maybe you can share a little of your personal story as well, right?
Yes.
You mentioned that this is part of the work that helped you get unstuck and get to the next level as well.
Yes. So I'll first use the example of, because I think a lot of people can relate to this, is if you're an entrepreneur, right? And you've decided that you want to earn 6 figures in business, right? That's what you want to do for this year. You want to earn 6 figures, but it hasn't been happening for you. So this was the same story for me. It was like, I just couldn't, quite reach that ceiling. I was like, I was working harder. I was working 40 hours a week. It wasn't about how hard and I'm productive and I'm efficient and I'm all those things and I'm motivated, but couldn't get past that ceiling, right? We have to, as human beings, be able to kind of see where our ceilings are and be able to kind of know where they are. But for me, it was about being able to really tap into, who do I have to be to achieve that success? If I want to do 6 figures in my business, what would the kind of person who has achieved that, how would she think? How would she act? What would she say? How would she walk? How would she talk? How would she dress? What kind of decisions would she make? All of those questions, when you really start to dive into that, and this is why I say it's also external work. It's not just internal. So we're not just working on your frequency. We're working on, for example, I had to go into my wardrobe. This is one of the exercises that we take people through, and go, at my next level self, so somebody who earns 6 figures, am I going to be wearing those clothes, some of those clothes? And I threw out 2/3 of my wardrobe. So I'm like, no. Everything that we
Did you go shopping?
No, I didn't go shopping, because at the time, I didn't have the time, and I certainly wasn't going to go and spend thousands and thousands of dollars. What I did was I took all the clothes, because clothes are just energy too, right? When you notice this, I'm going to ask everybody to go after this and to notice that when you put on certain clothes, you feel different than when you put on others. And women will tell you this when they're sometimes they can try on lots of different clothes and they don't feel great, but then they put on something like, okay, well, today, for whatever frequency I'm in today, that feels good. So this is just one aspect of self, right? Another aspect might be, what would she think? So would she be thinking, I'm not good enough? Would she be thinking, I don't know if I can do this? She might have fears, but your next level self would be able to go, fear, I see you, I hear you, it's okay, I understand, but you know what? I'm not going to listen to you today. I am moving through this, right? So we have to identify, who is it? What is my 6-figure self? What is it that she does? What does she think? How does she act? How does she behave? Who does she surround herself with? Because that's the next thing as well, right? If we're going to constantly surround ourselves with people who are constantly complaining about money but not doing anything about it, who are constantly complaining, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those people, but I'm saying they're not helpful for you to move to your next level. If who we surround ourselves with energetically is really important, right? So there are lots of different factors in our external environment that their energy impacts us and our frequency. And so we have to work with those as well. So we work on the inner world and we also work on the external world. There's lots of factors that we take heed of. So I hope that helps you to kind of get a sense of one of the practical ways that in fact, it's one of the most fundamental ways that we help people to really get clear on where it is that they've got to go and how they're going to get there, is to focus on this, is to focus on me.
What does the path forward look like for someone who is choosing to do this work alongside the strategy versus someone who's choosing not to do this work and just focus on the strategy?
Okay. So someone who's just focusing on the strategy, you mean business strategy? Are you talking about, like, yes. If I know I've got 10 steps towards 6-figure self, and it's, lead generation, and it's sales, and it's
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I'll give you the example of me. I was doing all that stuff. I invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in coaching. I had the best frameworks and the best strategies in the world. I was doing everything they told me. And for some people, because they already have that mindset or they're already vibrating at that frequency, that's enough. But for those that are still doing everything they can, or they've been given the framework and they're not doing everything they can because they're stuck in procrastination or self-doubt or overwhelm or overthinking, yeah, those are just energetic blocks that are holding them back. And that was a lot of what was happening for me too, was this, I'm not a procrastinator, but certainly there was self-doubt, 100%. So the path when you're not doing this work is you're going to constantly be hitting those invisible ceilings, right? Those energetic ceilings that are there, because your subconscious mind, sadly, it's not working for you unless you choose it to work for you. It's working against you. If you just let it be, it wants to keep you stuck in the comfort zone. It wants you to stay here. And there's a reason for that. We're not making it wrong. It's an evolutionary mechanism that is incredibly powerful and is designed to keep us safe, because for the whole of evolution up to this point, we were at risk of, our safety was at far more risk than it is. And look, in the world today, there are lots of people who live in the world who still have that issue. I'm not saying that, but for most of us, hopefully for most people listening to this podcast, you live in a relatively safe place and safety is not an issue for you, right? So, but your unconscious mind is still keeping you stuck there. And so the difference is that not only are you able to move much more quickly towards your next level, but you're able to do it in such a way that it feels incredible within you. You know, you feel free. You feel you're able to master your own thoughts. Yes, you still have fear, but you can rise above it. You can start to manifest not just what you want in your business, but in your entire life. Honestly, truly, anything is possible. Anything.
Yeah, I firmly believe that I manifested my boyfriend using some of the tools and practices that you talk about. For sure.
Right.
You have to become who you want to meet in the dating world. You have to become your goal, right? You have to truly rise to the level. And you see it in the world too, right? When you're at conferences and you talk to people who are bringing in 6, 7, 8 figures, you move about the world differently.
You do.
Than when you were just scraping by,
100%.
right? And if you're not at that level yet, you get to take a page out of a 6-figure earner's book and truly look at how are they talking? How are they setting boundaries? How are they introducing themselves? How do they carry themselves, right?
100%.
And you get to look at what would that look like for you? How do you become the person that you would want to be in a room with, that you would want to meet, personal or professional life?
100%.
Have to start with who are you going to be? I love how you talk about this subject. Beautiful. So I want to just check in with you and ask if you would be willing to share with us, what's your next goal? Where is the string pulling you towards right now? What are you building right now?
So essentially for me, it's about making a bigger impact, right? It's about reaching more people. If I can help more people, so I can actually go even wider. As I said, last year I launched a new group program. And so for me, it's really about kind of doubling down on that. And then I'm also still really focused on helping individuals as well. So it's not just about entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs is one of the, is one of the little pockets. But essentially for me, it's just about, I'm not somebody who wants to go out there and create a business where I have, 30 people working for me, et cetera, et cetera. I've got an amazing VA. I've got potentially partnering up with a coach as well. And the two of us really just want to create a good, solid business that makes a really nice income for us, that we can travel the world and work from anywhere, because my husband and I love traveling. And as soon as the kids are a little bit older, we will be going to live in different places again, for sure. So really for me, it's about creating a business that works for me, but at the same time that I'm earning good money and that I'm helping people, that I'm making a bigger impact. And that's really me.
So let me ask you the question that I ask everyone on the podcast, simply because we're all about freedom. We're all about purpose and freedom here. And you already talked a little bit about it. But what does freedom mean to you? And how do you know that you're building more freedom through your life, your relationships, your business?
So for me, it's about two things. It's about, can I take what I'm doing and move it anywhere? So for me, a sense of freedom is, can I decide that in 2 weeks' time, because my son is going to ride in a mountain bike competition in Europe, that I can actually go and spend those 3 weeks with him and work with him? For me, that's freedom. It literally is, I can just up and leave whenever I want, and I can take my laptop with me, and I love it. At the moment, the kids are at school, so that's not happening as often. But, being able to go back to South Africa and visit my family and say, look, you know what, guys, I'm going to be with you for 6 weeks or 2 months because I just want quality time with you, because every time we go back, it's squished into like 2 weeks of intenseness. and I'm just going to work while I'm here. So that's the first thing is that flexibility to just get up and go. But I know that I've got freedom when I have more time. And that means I have time to do the things that are really important to me. So the things that are important to me are my health. My husband and I are massively into our health. We sauna every day. We meditate every day. We work out. We do weight training. We're out in nature all the time. We're swimming in the ocean. So that takes up a lot of time. Like my health is really important. And cooking nice meals, and making sure that I'm able to have the money to really invest in going to the markets and buying the best food. So there's that sense of that sense of time where I can truly balance. And people talk about balance, but really truly balance my time in terms of work, and then also doing what it is that really nourishes my soul and is really meaningful for me.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the location independence is one of the cornerstones of my life, of my work, of Way of the Founder, right? Like being able to build a business that gives you agency over where you are, over being in a place where you're loved, over calling multiple places in the world your home,
Yes.
and being able to up and leave and not have a move to a different country or continent even affect your income. Right? Like this is such a beautiful thing that we have these days about or born out of digital entrepreneurialism, right? You get to build a business as long as you know how to scale it and scale back your time while scaling your impact and your income at the same time, because these two things are not mutually exclusive. In fact, you want to scale back your time, you have to scale your impact. You have to scale how you serve more people at, any given time. And having that privilege to build a location independent business, a business that gives you back time, a business that creates more income for you than you had in your 9-to-5, so that you can have a bigger impact both through the business and as a result of the vote that the money that you're making through the business is providing you with. Damn, it gives me goosebumps, the possibilities that we get to tap into. But like you shared throughout this entire episode, right? You have to change who you are in a way, right? You truly have to look at how does this woman, this man, this person who has this freedom, who has this location independence, who has this agency financially, mentally, emotionally, culturally, how does this person move about the world? So where can people start doing this work? Like if people wanted to get into this work within the next week or so, what would be a first step that you would invite listeners to take? So
I have activation meditation, which they can start with, which will give them, there's a 5-minute video beforehand, which will give them a little bit of an intro. And if that piques their interest, that the meditation is there. And then what that'll do is that will allow us to stay in contact. I have an email list. I love writing. So I'm on email a couple of times a week. They can really get a sense of, whether they like what I'm talking about. I talk a lot about quantum physics and neuroscience and who I am. And then if they are finding that that's really resonating, a really good entry point is I have a challenge called the Abundance Breakthrough Challenge. And it's a 5-day challenge, which is self-paced. You do it at your own pace. It was recorded live, but it's obviously available, and it's under $100. It's fantastic, but it's really good because it really helps you to get those breakthroughs, to identify where those blocks are, and then to show you actually how you can start breaking through and how you can start aligning the frequency. So I'll make sure that all that's available for everybody. I'll send that to you and you can make sure it's available for them. Those links.
Absolutely. Will do. And I will be taking both of these things myself.
Oh, good.
I'll be taking myself through the challenge and through the meditation. And I cannot wait to start getting your newsletters and learning more about this. Thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your wisdom, sharing your purpose, right? I really adore and feel really inspired by how tapped into your purpose you are.
Thank you.
It resonates. It's clearly you embody your why and you walk your talk, and it's just absolutely beautiful, inspiring, activating to see that. And I truly thank you for bringing all of you and all of your why to this podcast.
You're welcome. It's been so beautiful to talk to you. I've loved it. Thank you.
So thank you so much. And to you, to the listeners, as always, go and create more freedom today than you did yesterday and become the freedom, become the goal, become the outrageous, audacious dreams that you have so that these things can actually fall into place and manifest this side, on Earth side, in the material world for you. Love you so much. I mean it. And I'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to the podcast, Your Business Untethered, hosted by me, Dinat, creator of Way of the Founder. I love hearing from you, so please drop me a DM on Instagram sharing your insights from this episode. And if you are ready to take the leap, my free guide to plot your 9-to-5 escape in 7 days and the Freedom Business Scorecard are in the show notes for you to grab. This episode created change for you? Please leave a review and be a friend and share this with a friend or colleague that you love. Until next time, please wake every day, seize the day, defy the norm, and create your very own type of freedom. I love you. I do mean it.